Okay, welcome everybody and to the Columbus Common Council regular meeting tonight of Tuesday, November 21st of 2023. And before we do roll call, we need to address something. There are going to be items discussed tonight or other nights where there will be differing opinions. We need to be respectful of each other. We do not need to have any rude or condescending comments. We need to, as a council, be working together. So keep that in mind as we move forward, please. So if I may have a roll call.
Finkler. Here. Gray.
Present.
Hammer.
Here.
Motive. Present. Reed is absent. Roki. Present. Steiner.
Here.
Okay. And if you would join me with the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have had notice of open meeting, and I would look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll move to approve tonight's agenda.
Alder Rolke will second.
Okay, I have a motion by Alder Finkler and a second by Alder Roki to approve tonight's agenda. Any discussion on this from anybody? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And do we have anybody signed up tonight for comments? Paper would be in the back if there was anything. Okay. There's no paper? Oh, no paper. Is there anybody that wishes to speak? Seeing that there was no. Just listening? Okay. Thank you. With that, then, we'll move on to consent agenda. And with that, you have the council and committee of the whole minutes, the operator licenses for licensing periods 7/1/23 through 6/30/25, and approve the appointment of the election clerks for the 2024-2025 election cycle.
Alder Motive will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Gray seconds.
Okay, I have a motion by Alder Motive and a second by Alder Gray to approve tonight's consent agenda. Is there any discussion on this item here? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda approved. On to new business. Consider and take action on resolution number 1423 with the special assessments for the residential 2024 road work. And this was presented to us from Jason of last week.
Alder Gray moves to approve resolution 14-23.
Alder Steiner will second.
Okay, I have a motion by Alder Gray and a second by Alder Steiner to approve resolution number 1423, special assessments for the residential for the 2024 road projects. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passed. Next is the resolution number 1523, which is special assessments for the commercial part of the 2024 road project, which would be Commercial Drive.
Alder Motive will make a motion to approve resolution 1523.
Alder Rolke will second.
Okay, I have a motion by Alder Motive and a second by Alder Roki to approve resolution number 1523, special assessment for the commercial part of the 2024 road projects. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Resolution 1523 approved. So now we move on to taking action on resolution number 16-23, which is the updated fees for the solid waste contract. And Crystal Larson is here in case there's any questions on anything.
Alder Motif will make a motion to approve Resolution 1623.
Alder Finkler will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alder Motif and a second by Alder Finkler to approve Resolution 1623 for the updated fees of the solid waste contract. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none. Is this a roll call? With it being changing a fee? Or- Okay, roll call.
Hammer.
I don't vote
Oh,
on this.
so sorry. Motive.
Aye.
Finkler.
Aye.
Steiner.
Aye.
Relke.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Okay, we move on to item number 4, which is to take action on the copier lease for the police department. You have all the information that was submitted to you through Chief Weiner. And with that, I'd be looking at a motion to approve the copier lease for the police department.
Alder Finkler will move to approve the copier lease for the police department.
Motif will second.
Okay, I have a motion by Alder Finkler and a second by Alder Motif to approve the copier lease for the police department. Is there any further discussion on this item? Oh, Dennis, did you have
There's
any?
a second part to that, and also dispose of the used one via online auction.
Oh, okay.
I asked Pat to add that as a secondary.
All right, and then it would be the disposal of the old copier through online auction. So would you
Right.
like to
Yep.
amend?
Alder Finkler moves to approve the lease for the copy machine for the police department and also the sale of the old copier on the online auction platform.
Motif will second the amendment.
Okay, any discussion further on that? Okay, thank you very much for pointing that out. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Do we need a
Oh,
roll
is this a
call?
roll call? Because,
Yeah.
okay, very good. Right,
Yep.
okay, thank you. So, roll call.
Motive.
Aye.
Finkler.
Aye.
Steiner.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Relke.
Aye.
Okay, with that, we will move on to item number 5, and that is to take action on the 2024 Dodge County Humane Society contract. As presented, we would be sticking with the same contract that we have had for the past several years. And if could have a motion?
Alder Finkler moves to approve the contract with the Dodge County Humane Society. 2024 contract.
Alder Rolke will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alder Finkler and a second by Alder Rolke to approve the 2024 Dodge County Humane Society contract. Is there any further discussion on this item? Alder Gray.
Just one, I think we should probably clarify how we want to approve the Dane County contract instead of just approving it, because there's a dozen options if you put them all together.
Okay, well, so as stated, it's a lump sum of $1,500, which covers up to 5 domestic stray animals. Animals in excess of 5 will be charged $400 per animal over 5. And then on the next page, it is the option of Humane Society must have approval before accepting any animal. In the event that a municipal representative cannot be reached, City of Columbus authorizes the Executive Director of DCHS to act on your behalf in emergency situations. So,
Right, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
It just,
nope,
it
that's-
could have been as stated or as presented or
Correct.
as a lot of things. It's
Correct.
just, it wasn't.
so with those statements, Alder Finkler, you good with your motion?
Yep.
And you're good with your second?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, then we will need a roll call on this also.
Gray.
Aye.
Finkler.
Aye.
Motor.
Aye.
Steiner.
Aye.
Roki.
Aye.
Okay, then we move on to item number 6, which is to consider and take action on the Public Works Superintendent job description as presented in your packet by City Administrator Lisa Wilson. Is there anything that you would like to add to this at that time?
I think said the last time, this is the leadership position. We've actually hired a maintenance 1, promoted someone into a maintenance 2, so we now have 2 maintenance 2s that seem to be working really well together with the rest of the team, trying to pull things together. So I think this would just be kind of a great way to pull it together.
Alder Motif will make a motion to approve the Public Works Superintendent job description.
Steiner can second.
Okay, have a motion by Alder Motif and a second by Alder Steiner to approve the Public Works Superintendent job description. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is to consider and take action on the council member reimbursement request. For legal services.
Alder Rolke moves to approve the council member reimbursement request for $2,256.50.
Steiner will second.
A motion by Alder Roki and a second by Alder Steiner to approve the reimbursement of the amount of $2,256.50 for legal services. Any further discussion on this item? Alder Gray?
So I'm pretty torn on this because, like, part of me wants to help a friend and get them reimbursed, but I think this is setting a precedent that we have never had before, that will reimburse alders for legal fees that they incurred. If it was a civil trial, there would be no reimbursement. Your legal fees are your own. To me, it's requesting our taxpayers to pay for something that they were not aware they would be paying for, and that isn't necessarily something they should be paying for. And I mean, even with that further, something simple like this, it could have, I don't know if it even merited legal fees to begin with. So, like, if it was something more extreme or something where an attorney was truly needed, I would be more inclined to do it. I personally don't think an attorney was ever needed for something of this matter, and requesting the taxpayers to reimburse an alder for their own personal fees seems an egregious use of taxpayers' money.
Alder, I'm not sure who we had up first, but.
I think Adam did.
I can.
Alder Steiner.
I think the fact that this complaint was so egregious that it didn't need any kind of counsel is the reason why we're seeking she's seeking the reimbursement to begin with. And it's not just holding the city accountable, but it's holding anyone who makes a complaint to make sure that you're making a complaint justly, as opposed to just making complaints for whatever personal reason you may have against a council member or someone for making a decision. These things have to be taken seriously, and they shouldn't be just thrown out at a whim for weapon purposes, for whatever purpose you may have. Is it a little odd to have taxpayers pay a legal fee? Yes, but it depends on the claim itself. If it was something that was an actual, valid claim that had required a whole bunch, probably we wouldn't be reimbursing it. I don't think this claim really had a lot of merit to it. It seemed very unnecessary. I think it's worth the reimbursement consideration.
Alder Roki.
I think that anything that we do post this first foray into the Ethics Committee is going to be precedent setting because we've never done anything like this before. I also think that Alder Motive didn't necessarily know that maybe she didn't need representation because, again, we've never done anything like this before, so it was a precedent for her too. I also think that had it been a civil trial, it wouldn't have met the burden of proof to get that far, so she wouldn't have needed legal representation. And I agree with Alder Steiner that, given how quickly we resolved the issue in the first meeting, it was not necessary to take to that point at all, and we should be reimbursing Alder Motive for her legal fees for this.
Alder Finkler?
I would like Attorney Johnson's opinion on this. Do you have anything more to add based on our last conversation where you said it wasn't really our responsibility to pay, but there isn't anything one way or the other?
Your ordinance does not say anything one way or the other about reimbursing or about not reimbursing. It does give the defendant in a situation like this the right to have counsel, which was exercised by Alder Motive. And I agree with pretty much all the comments. This is one of those things that can go both, that I could argue both sides of this for a very long time. The thing that I would, the points that I would make right now is that I would not look at this as a precedent-setting situation. If this ever comes up again, it will be referred to as, look what we did last time. That is true. But in a situation like this, the council that is sitting is going to evaluate this on a case-by-case basis to determine if it's something that should be reimbursable, which is exactly what you're doing now. If this was as it turned out, the complaint was pretty thin and didn't merit a lot of attention, but nobody knew that when you were starting. So it turned out to be much to do about nothing, but it could have been significantly different. So I think each one of these will have to be looked at as time goes on. The council may want to consider in the future taking a look at this issue and creating a position by ordinance as to whether or not you're ever going to reimburse, or if you're going to always reimburse, and then you're changing the platform by putting that right in your code. Otherwise, you're always going to have a case-by-case analysis, and that's exactly what you're going through right now. So whatever you decide is, you can argue, like I said, you can argue both sides of this for a long time. Just remember to do a roll call vote.
Yes. Any further discussion on this? So, hearing none, we'll take a roll call.
Roelke.
Aye.
Hammer. No.
No.
Finkler.
Aye.
Gray.
Nay.
Steiner.
Aye.
Reed is absent, and I'm assuming voted will abstain. 3 ayes, 1 nay.
All right, we will move then on to item number 8, which is to consider and take actions on the claims in the amount of $369,129.43.
Alder Motive will make a motion to approve the claims in the amount of $369,129.43.
Alder Finkler will second.
Okay, a motion by Alder Motive and a second by Alder Finkler to pay the claims in the amount of $369,129.43. Any discussion on this item here? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Finkler.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Roelke.
Aye.
Steiner.
Aye.
Voda.
Aye.
Okay, and then under reports, City Administrator, did you have anything? No? Okay. So I have a few things to address. So before coming mayor, I had expressed my opinion regarding the dingy property as it was being as against the city purchasing it. During my campaigning and after taking office, I heard from citizens that wanted to sell the property to those who wanted to restore it, and from citizens who wanted to see it developed for residential housing. Both have sound merits, and I took that all into consideration. I weighed the information about the ARPA use and the information from attending conferences, and from that, other communities are purchasing land for residential development and then working with developers in order to achieve their goal. There were concerns about the potential loss of the ARPA funds to meet criteria. And then we kind of came to a stalemate with what we had been working on, and I made what I considered to be the best decision for the city going forward. There are going to be unhappy people in this matter, no matter what the outcome. And I appreciate everybody's perspective on the matter, and my hope is that we can move forward with this city and work together to move the city forward. Thank you. Then, other items, holiday parade and tree lighting is Friday, November 24th at 6 p.m., starting off at I believe it's the elementary school parking lot, working their way up to the library tree. The CPKC holiday train will arrive Monday, December 4th at approximately 9:05 p.m. Realizing it is a Monday night, but it would be great to see a huge turnout for the holiday train. That organization does a phenomenal job with supporting food pantries throughout the nation. Check the city website for updates on leaf pickup. That's the best that I can tell residents right now, is to continue to watch the city website for additional leaf pickup. Our sympathies and prayers go to the Chief Weiner's family on the passing of his mother. And then I wish our citizens a blessed Thanksgiving. With that, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Alder Rolke will second.
Okay, I have a motion, excuse me, a motion by Alder Finkler and a second by Alder Rolke to adjourn. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Does anybody need or want to take a break, or do we just want to go straight through? Go straight through? Okay. Well, in that case, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting. It is Tuesday, November 21st, and it is about 6:53 p.m. And if I could please have a roll call.
Winkler,
Here.
Gray,
Present?
Hammer,
Here.
Motiv,
Present.
Ms. Reed is absent. Wilkie,
Present.
Steiner.
Here.
Tonight's meeting has been properly noticed, and I am looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Alder Steiner will
Fink.
make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Steiner and a second from Alder Finkler. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And do we have anybody who wishes to speak for citizens' comments tonight? All right. Included in your packet, you will find department reports for DPW, fire, library, Lifestar, police, treasurer, and wastewater treatment plant. And the next item on the agenda is to discuss the public safety clerk job description. Dennis?
Good evening. I'm just going to provide a little historical background on this position and then talk about the change in the job description. Back in 2016 or 2017, Fire Chief Keen and Police Chief Meister had the idea to combine two part-time positions into a full-time position. And that is what we know today as what became the public safety clerk. And that position works 32 hours a week at the police department doing police things, and 8 hours a week doing fire things. Same physical location at the police department. She's got a different connection and login for fire department stuff, doing a wide variety of duties. In the initial job description, pretty much everything was balled together in one. It was just a very long list of details encompassing both positions. And there's a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences as well. So with the current public safety clerk retiring, her last day is coming up, I think, in the office early December. It was a time, obviously a good time, to look at the job description and maybe updating it and realigning it for anything that may have changed over the course of its history, which is exactly what we did here. What you see is a product of, I met, myself and Chief Hazeltine met with Stephanie from HR, and we went back and forth with different details, and we broke them down to the specific position. So instead of having one massive list for two positions, you have a list for police department-related duties and fire department-related duties. So it just a little identifies more specific to each department and what the position does. It's worked out very well. I mean, there's weeks where we're very busy at the police department and maybe can't give as much time to fire, and vice versa. But nothing has ever not gotten done that's been time sensitive for either department. And I think, and Chief Hazeltine and I have a great relationship. There's going to be no issue with this as a position continues on. We're just looking to tweak some current duties. One thing we did talk about with the inception of this is maybe looking at some of the duties under the fire department aspect of it, and maybe taking some of the general administrative things off of Chief Hazeltine to help in a reduction of his hours. I mean, just day-to-day like administrative stuff, not decision-making, not, formal stuff like chief work, but just stuff that he is doing now that could be handled by a clerk or a secretary or whatever you'd want to call it. So we've had conversations about that, and I'm sure once this position begins, there'll be some more of those changes and discussions. I am happy to say that we recruited and interviewed 2 people, and yesterday offered someone a job, and they accepted, and will start December 11th. This is a very key position because if we have someone in custody, reports have to be done very timely, and being down to just one person to manage the office and to take this over if there was a huge gap was going to be very problematic. So she's going to start December 11th. Significant experience, specifically with the software and law enforcement platforms we use, so the training is going to be minimal. No fire background training. I've talked to the chief about that, and we're going to work out with their software program, and she seems very technological savvy, so I'm sure she'll catch on very quickly. But I think we got a very, very good candidate, and we certainly want them to come in with eyes open and see what they're going to be doing and have it updated. So essentially, this was just an update. There's no, we're not reinventing the wheel on this position. We just broke the duties down for the specific departments, and that's pretty much it.
Can I make one small comment?
Yes.
You need to update your date. It still says 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I will have Stephanie do that. Yep. That would have been, I think, when the first one was written, and then I'm sure it just didn't get caught in the edit, because I think it was officially passed and incepted in early 17, but I will make sure that she gets that changed. She maintains all the job descriptions, and yeah, I missed that as well.
Thank you, Chief. Does anybody else have, Alder Finkler?
I just have a comment. I just wanted to thank you for working to hopefully help Chief Hazeltine get a little bit of reprieve from some of his administrative work with this clerk also. So thank you very much for approaching it that way.
Yeah, it's, we're down 3 officer positions, and when we have less officers, there's less work to do. This is a needed full-time position, but there's going to be days where there's not as much going on, and she can maybe do some more fire stuff. With the 32 and 8-hour breakdowns for the positions, every week is different. So if we have a quiet week and the chief has a project or something going on he needs help with, and it ends up being a 20 and 20, I'm fine with that, as long as the work gets done. So, the 32 and 8 are kind of rule of thumb. but I'm very willing to lend hours wherever they need be, just as long as the work gets done. And since this has been in place in 2017, there's been zero issues with that, zero.
Any other questions? Alder Gray?
I mean, you know best, you and the chief know exactly what this role is doing. My only caution would be if it's worked out really well in the past with them not adding to the workload. If you're adding to the workload, I would just, perhaps task the office manager with supervising and making sure that this position doesn't get overworked. And if it does, we might have to look at perhaps a full-time police and a part-time fire separately. Because I think it's a great idea for this position to do some of that administrative work and take it off of the chief's desk. I just don't want them to end up getting overworked,
Nope.
if that makes sense.
Duly noted. There were some of the duties that the current clerk was doing and then migrated over to the chief started doing them, and we were still within the time frame. So we're hoping to migrate some of it back to relieve some time from him. And I honestly don't see it disrupting and work not getting done or it being inefficient. I think it can be managed very well, and it'll work out just great.
Any other questions? Is everybody comfortable moving this forward? Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is to discuss the utility director job description.
Okay, the job description was pretty much the same as what it was back in when they were initially looking. The only thing that changed on it would be on page 2 of the position description. It said required knowledge, skills, and ability, and the word required was taken out. And then a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university in engineering, business administration, accounting, public administration, preferred was added, or other directly relevant experience. So putting experience as definite a plus in case. Not saying that if they have a bachelor's degree, that'd be great, but experience says a lot for the position also. So, and those were the only changes that were from the originals. So,
Does anybody have any questions? Is everybody comfortable moving this forward? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is to discuss bank account name change for the wastewater treatment plant. Crystal, were you going to talk about that one, or who?
There was not an issue, but a recommendation from our auditors to reclassify some of the cash on hand, which we have in savings accounts for sewer, that were considered designated. And they were different savings accounts set up for different things, and one of which was connection fees. Not every utility keeps connection fees set aside for future use. A lot of times the connection fees just come in, they're revenue for the year to be utilized. There is expenses that are incurred when you are doing new connections. So that's why some utilities choose to save these for expenditures that are bigger than possibly just the connection fee itself when you're adding on lines. So the commission did decide to declassify or change the classification from designated to unrestricted on the connection fees and discontinue tracking them in savings for future purposes. In so doing, it's relieved one of our bank accounts. These are city-owned bank accounts, the title of which is being used for sewer. And I would like to keep it sewer, but just make the title change. It right now states connection fees on the title. The bank does require something from council, or they don't require it, but they've asked. And I thought that's easy enough. We'll come and discuss it and just change it to a savings, basic savings for sewer. And my intention here is to utilize that in our big exchange of accounts and money going from the city's accounts to the utility company, the utility itself, because we are moving the books over to the utility for them to track the funds and monitor accounts and everything for the sewer fund. So this will be one of the accounts I will utilize in transferring monies with them. So it would help me out, and we do have the account available.
Any questions? Is everybody comfortable moving this forward for vote? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is to discuss the fee schedule. And Lisa, you were gonna tackle that one?
Okay, so what you have before you is, there's an ordinance, there's a resolution, and there's a long now spreadsheet that contains all of the city's fees, hopefully in one spot, so that folks aren't trying to look at various different copies, trying to figure out what they owe for different things. In the course of doing this, though, what happened is I noticed that our municipal code has a lot of sections that actually have the fees written into the ordinance itself, which means that I can't just change them with the resolution and the fee schedule. So hopefully I didn't miss any. It's very possible that I did, because I will tell you they're not like designated and pulled out in each section saying I'm a fee and I'm in this piece. It required me to go through each one and try to find them. So if I missed something, it's very well possible. I apologized already to Paul because I didn't send my ordinance to him that he needs to review, but hopefully it will meet his requirements and be okay to move forward, but that's kind of where we're at. So anything in red is a change, including in the fee schedule. And then once we adopt the resolution, those places that have an authority with it, that maybe it's not grounded in a statute or it's not grounded in ordinance to charge the fee, we will add the resolution number that approved it by the council, if that kind of all makes sense.
Alder Steiner?
I just want to, I know there's been some issues going on lately about food trucks. Is there anything that covers that in our fees, or is that something we'd have to build ourselves for that
I think
purpose?
Mayor and I have talked about this. There's a lot of communities that have their kind of their own license built into the code, and then we could add a fee. I think it's easy enough to do if that's where we're going.
I think it would be necessary to look into that, because there's food trucks are pretty popular nowadays.
Yeah.
and-
Any other questions? Alder Gray?
I mean, I would echo Alder Steiner's comments, because that has been a very hot issue here. Is it possible to potentially look at a fee, because this, of course, has to go to council and everything next. Is it possible to potentially have that adapted into ordinance and look at a fee for that prior to council?
Sure.
Or is that too much? Like, that's, like, I don't know how much that is.
We can get that done, Paul. It's not that difficult, is it? I think it seems simple. Yeah, it's just amending the ordinance to include the
Well,
license.
I'm trying to remember if we've had any conversations about the food truck ordinance in the past, and I think that we may have, but not, I don't think we have anything on the books right now,
Right.
No.
right?
Right, that's the issue. So
Right.
A lot of the owners have been frustrated because they've been getting charged what they feel is not a fair rate. So having something clear in writing, I think, would help them a lot and help Columbus by getting these food trucks back and operating in Columbus again.
So setting the fee is actually the easy part. Just creating the ordinance is the harder part. Normally, you would want to create the ordinance first and then set the fee second, but you actually could do it backwards, because you can do it backwards if you wanted to. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So are you giving direction to try to put together an ordinance for food trucks? Is that where you're going, or?
I mean, I think that's probably best. It needs to be done at some point. I don't know how long it takes or what's a reasonable ask. I'm just saying that it needs to be done. And like Alder Steiner mentioned, No, he brought it up. I just feel like we bring things up like that a lot, and then we never actually do anything about it.
Right.
So I'm just asking, when could we reasonably accomplish it?
I would say going for an ordinance first, let's do this in the right way and the right direction. It doesn't have to be done tomorrow.
Right.
It just needs to be worked on.
One of the good things about flipping your process to having your fee schedule by resolution is it's a little bit easier to change the resolution than it is the ordinance. It's not a significant difference, but it just is a little bit less clunky. But I can start working on an ordinance. I mean, usually when I put together an ordinance like this, I look at if I can find some other communities, and then, you know, you always have Madison who's over on one extreme, and then you've got some others that are over here, and you try to cobble something together to give you some options. So I'll start working on that.
I believe Sun Prairie has it in there. I'm doing a little bit of searching around for that.
If
so.
they have one, then that would be a similar, well, it's not similar size, but a similar area for Columbus. Okay.
And, I mean, if you think it's not inappropriate to do a resolution with a fee and then work on the ordinance, then I would like it, I think that would resolve it with the local food truck owners and make it,
Are you
just so that they
allowing,
know what they're getting charged.
are you allowing food trucks to be in the city right now without an ordinance? And if so,
I've seen one.
and I mean, I know that they pop up every now and then. Is the city charging a fee?
Well, and see, that's the problem, is the local food truck
Sometimes.
owners are saying that the city is charging fees and rather exorbitant fees of, like, I can't remember, like, some of them said like $100 like per occasion or per month, which is more than what most municipalities charge per year. So, like, they're getting charged, so they're no longer setting up in Columbus because they aren't willing to pay those high fees. So I think if we have something for them, that'll at least bring them back and pacify them until we have the full ordinance done. in my
Yeah,
opinion.
you can certainly set your fees to prevent or to address that issue. You're not preventing it, you're going to address it, and the ordinance can follow, because the ordinance is basically where are they gonna be located, who's gonna determine where they're located, what kind of food quality rules are you gonna have, and I'm going to assume that there's probably something statewide that is a starting point for that. And yeah, so you could actually set your fee first as part of doing this, and then the ordinance will not be dependent on the fee anyway. It'll be different.
I think from what I've heard, an average is about $50 a year. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's pretty, I mean, they're not often here in town. They're usually for special occasions, special events. So, I mean, $50 a year seems fairly reasonable to me if we start with a fee schedule with that.
I'll agree.
Yeah, and I mean, whatever is reasonable, but like if we could get like a recommendation for a fee on the resolution for food trucks for our next one, and then Attorney Johnson work on a future ordinance, is that kind of what we're thinking?
That's fair.
That's fair.
So let me give you something to think about from what Alder Steiner just mentioned, is that you're going to have options for these fees. I can easily see somebody who's going to want to be here daily or all summer, at least. I can easily see people that are going to want to be around for the festivals and for the parades, and then I can easily see people that are going to want to just pop up on a Saturday or a Sunday, the coffee shops in particular. So you're going to have different categories to consider.
Right, and I think the first one, the resolution, in my opinion, could be pretty basic fees. But you're right, there's a lot of fees to consider, like whether or not they're using electricity or, like what they're plugged into. There's a lot of things to consider in the resolution. I think a basic, like perhaps even just an annual fee to operate in Columbus, and then we'll get a resolution to add in additional fees that may be necessary in the future, if that makes sense in my head, if that's.
Well, I would think the ordinance would cover pretty much all of that, but the initial fee schedule to allow food trucks in would be the way to go.
Yeah, so just like an annual, and then the
Right.
ordinance picks up on the additional fees.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions? All right. Moving on, next on the agenda is to discuss development RFPs. Right.
What you have in your packet, I believe, are the requests for proposals that were sent out when you originally embarked on the 3 different properties at 1149 West James, Western Avenue, Town Ave Drive, and then Park Avenue. So these are very bare minimum in terms of what you guys are asking for. If I were someone reading these, I'm not quite sure what you're expecting in terms of how you want the property to develop. There's not really a vision that anybody can use to put together a proposal that actually makes sense to start, in my mind, a negotiation with the council to move forward. What I did is I went for the dingy property and I put kind of my own together. I went out to the property, I walked around, I drove around all the neighborhoods, down the connections to the hospital, down into downtown, and kind of came up with just a proposal. I'm going to go on the record for saying that just because it's written the way it is doesn't necessarily mean that the council has to go that direction. It's just to start a discussion so that you can start to put something out there to develop these parcels. So I'll hand out what I put together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as it sits right now, obviously there's the front page that's the notice asking for developer qualifications and financial proposals for the redevelopment of the property. So not just kind of throwing something out there. We have evaluation criteria that go into if they've had experience before, what other kinds of projects have they done, how did they finance those other projects? I mean, you're looking at the whole total package here. This RFP does allow you guys to have the option for them to propose incentives, right? Obviously, you had mentioned you're going to have to pay something, a portion of this to actually get it developed. So this also has a section for them when they submit their proposal to say, here's what it's going to come for a bank, here's what we're asking for from the city, so that you guys can actually take that all into account. I tried to slip in some information about the surrounding area, your population, your median household income, all of those kind of things that kind of tie into what I think a developer we would be looking at if they were going to come here. So again, this is just a draft. I apologize you're getting it now rather than ahead of time. But I think if you're serious about trying to move forward with some of this, you need to come together to create a vision as to what you actually expect these to look like when they come in.
Alder Finkler?
I just wanted to make a quick comment that thank you, Lisa, for this, because the original RFPs were just way too vague and open, and I really appreciate the time that you put into this. I'm obviously going to need a little bit more time to review this, but it already looks a million times better than the original RFPs that went out.
Alder Gray?
I would agree with that. I think this is an awesome starting point. I don't know how much conversation we have for what directions we want to go tonight, or if we want to give some directions in what we'd like to see at the property so that staff can start creating more specific RFPs and start building something like this and better for all of the properties. I think that's probably where we are. I think reviewing exactly what our administrator created tonight is probably not the best use of our time, even though I agree with Alder Finkler, this is already better. I think that's probably where we're at. So I guess my light's still on, so I'll kick that off. This property, the Dingy property, very much in line with what Lisa's started putting together, in my opinion, is I think a lot of this is a great property for residential use. I would personally like to see the house remain, if at all possible. So that's one of the things I would like in the RFP, is to make sure they understand that there is historic nature of this property and that we would like to preserve it. I think we should also potentially look at some of the barns that we know are that aren't super easily salvaged, to have, there's companies that will dismantle and recycle all of that material without charging us. So I think that could reduce costs in the future when we do move forward with this. I think that's something we should start looking into right away, is doing something with some of those materials that could be upcycled. Maybe trying to salvage some of them or retain some of them ourselves for like a sign of whatever the development will be called. Like, it'd be kind of neat to make it out of, like, have a little sign there that's made out of them. Like, they're just ideas, but I think this is kind of where we're at of what we want to see happen to these properties and what we'd like in the RFPs.
Alder Steiner?
I agree with with what he's saying about the Dingy property. I mean, there's salvage things you can do with the barns, and they were going to have to come down one way or the other, so it's better to utilize whatever they have there, whatever we can. As looking at the other properties, I think, Park and Tower are pretty decent locations for residential. The Countryside building, I know there's been a lot of contention about wanting to put still a fire station there or something there. We haven't discussed that yet. I think it's pertinent to actually look to see where is the best location to look towards building a new public safety building. Is it actually this property? Is it somewhere else? I think a bit more study needs to actually happen before we can determine what we're going to do with the building as it sits there. I think before we even think about putting on an RFP on it, it's like, let's determine exactly what the use of this property best is.
Okay. Alder Finkler?
I think that's fine to do another study. We've done studies upon studies upon studies, and we've already started prepping on the Countryside property for a fire station that was in the 2050 plan. I know there's multiple different comments on the 2050 plan and its detail and, and everything like that. And I understand that's out there. However, this has been something that's been in the plans for 8 years now, and we're just gonna toss it out. I really think that Columbus needs a new public safety building, and I think we need to start acting on it now. That's what the citizens want. If we want to bring more people in, I mean, I just drive into Fall River and I'm like, oh, they have such a nice fire department sitting there. You just feel so much more safer and happy about a community that actually takes care of their public safety buildings and their folks. So I just really think we should be really looking into the Countryside property for that. What I don't want to happen is I don't want us to willy-nilly throw out an RFP for that or sit and wait for a study for I don't know how long, and then we're dragging our feet even more, or potentially using that property for something else, and then here we are back to having no property for the public safety building. We've already lost the parking lot to it. I think we really need to think about consistency and continuity in the plans of this city and keep moving forward on that. And that's been something that I've heard each and every alder on here make a comment about that, about other topics. So I think we need to put our money where our mouth is and start getting a little bit more consistent with our planning and execution of those plans.
Alder Gray?
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's much of what Alder Steiner was conveying, is that we should look at these and make a decision before we move in. I don't think he was saying we should make a willy-nilly RFP again or do anything of that nature, that we should look into this property. Tower Drive is a great potential for a new fire station. I also believe that before we come to a final location for a fire station, one of the big things is that we need a a stronger fire district. We aren't the only people that utilize our fire department. We're far from it. All of the local communities are a big part of our fire department. And when you look at that, it being in the middle of Columbus may or may not be the best location. We should be looking at the overall encompassing, because it is not only Columbus that is the fire department. So there could be better land for a fire department than this specific land. My opinion on it will never change, that you should not use some of the most expensive property in your city to put a municipal building on. That's just not being a good steward of the taxpayers' funds, in my opinion. But that's irrelevant at this point. We do need to figure out where the best location is, because you're right, that does need to happen. Prior council, that's why we purchased the land on Tower Drive, was for public, for a new fire station, for multiple reasons. But so I think that's another location we should be looking at for a potential fire station. But we should be including all of the local communities in the discussion of a new fire station, because the hopes would be that we could develop a functioning fire district so that we aren't the only, so that Columbus taxpayers aren't the only people footing the bill for something that many, many taxpayers outside of Columbus benefit from. I think it's too soon to build the fire station until we have that piece, because it's just being irresponsible with our taxpayers' money, not having it included with the rest. Plus, the rest of the local communities should have some say in it. It is also their fire department. It's not only Columbus's fire department, it's also Elba's fire department. It is all of them. So we shouldn't be excluding them from the conversation.
Mayor Hammer?
I believe it's set up in the budget. There was a money for a site survey, which would go out and just look at all what land is available, where, and these people would recommend where the best spot is for a public safety building. So
It would be nice if that could happen as part of your comp plan update.
okay.
Sorry. Had to try.
I would just like to say 100% agree with Lisa on that. We need our comp plan revised big time, and I would love to see us start working on that. And I know that's a little off subject, but.
Alder Finkler?
Yeah, I would like us to not put out any RFPs then until we have that discussion on a public safety building, because if the Dingy property is a good location for residential, Tower Drive is a good location for residential, then that means either one could also be an option for a public safety building, which I don't think is the right place to put them, because I would prefer to not have fire departments right there. However, I feel that we are not the experts up here to make that determination. I am just going off of the previous studies and the previous plans, is to put it at Countryside. And I think that that needs to be figured out before we RFP any property then.
Any, Alder Gray?
Personally, I would be perfectly comfortable moving forward with and figuring out an RFP for the Dingy property. I do think that Tower Drive is another good location for a potential public safety building. I don't think we need to hold up the Dingy property and Tower Drive both for that purpose, especially since the Dingy property can fit a lot more housing than Tower Drive can. So, but both could potentially fit a public safety building. I won't argue that fact. Both could potentially fit that. So personally, I think on that line, yes, holding off on Tower Drive could be a good thing, because I think that could be a very viable option. And it was a viable option when they did the study before. Tower Drive did come up as an option. It's just, it wasn't available to purchase. This was the only lot that was available to purchase. That's the only reason it was ever designated as a fire department. It wasn't said that it was a better location than Tower Drive during that study. Just an aside for your information. But I do believe holding off on Tower Drive's RFP along with that would make sense until we decide, well, not us decide, until we get something saying where the best location would be. That does make sense.
Alder Finkler?
Yeah, I just have a question, but I don't know if it's a question to anybody in particular. Why the rush on dingy property now when there was no rush earlier? I feel like we need to have a plan and we need to stick to the plan. And I think that's something that this council needs. This council needs to come together and have a plan for what they're going to do and actually stick to it and not rush anything. And if we were not in a rush before on dingy, I'm really confused why we're all of a sudden in a rush. That's my worry.
Alder Gray?
I didn't say we should rush it. I said that is the one that I'm comfortable with, that we should continue discussions and figure out how we should move forward with an RFP process. I don't think we should put it on a back burner just because it's something, it should be discussed. It should have, in my opinion, been being discussed this entire time and should have had a proper RFP. That wasn't up to me as an individual. It's not rushing it to discuss it and figure out the best approach for an RFP.
Alder Motif?
I believe we do have some time with the dingy property where we can discuss it. However, I do want to remind this council that the ARPA funds need to be used by the end of 2024. So there is some time constraints there. And I think one of the things that would be helpful with this council is to, we appeared, at least at the last meeting, to be in agreement that housing would be good for that area. And if we're in agreement on that, then I would like to see us focus on the RFP for the dingy property first.
Other thoughts?
I agree completely with that. I think we should focus on the dingy properties RFP.
Alder Steiner?
I would have to agree that the dingy property was purchased for residential housing. It wasn't purchased for any other reason. It should be moved towards that direction. Tower Drive, I personally don't think it's good for a public safety building. It's a bit too residential, it'd be hard to get around, but I'm not an expert at it. I'm not going to sit here and say that I am. Maybe, James Street is. I don't know. But I think we need to determine not just these two locations, but any location around the area to see what really is the best for a fire department or police department, whoever, so they can get to wherever they need to as fast as they can. It's not really this discussion. I'm just saying we need to have that opened up for the future before we move forward on either Tower Drive and James Street or any of them, but dingy is residential. So that one should be able to move forward with the discussion and RFP while we get going before the other two.
Alder Finkler?
If the majority is for dingy being residential, which it probably is, which is fine. I don't want it to be the public safety building anyway. I think that a good compromise and something that the council should consider doing in the future is like trying to find compromises where we can help build up our relationships and work together. And what I would love to see is if we are going to proceed on the RFP for residential at the dingy property, is I would love for us to parallel see where we can put a public safety building so we are hitting the important factors from both of the top priorities right now that are expressed on council. And I think that there's no reason why we can't do both in parallel and that can't be supported because we know both are needed and majority.
Alder Gray?
That is exactly what Alder Steiner, Alder Motif, and myself have all said, that we should be looking at the best location overall for the public safety building and move forward with the RFP for the dingy property, since we're in agreement that should be residential, but we should figure out the best location for the fire department overall before we go to RFP on the others or make a decision on exactly where it should land. And it needs to be a bigger conversation than us, because we aren't the experts and Columbus residents are not the only people that utilize it.
Mayor Hammer?
Yeah, need to keep away from the focus of fire station versus public safety, because we would be looking at housing, fire department, police department, and potentially EMS. So I think we need also to have sit-down discussion with the fire chief and the police chief at some point too, in discussing what they would feel would be a good location, so.
Okay, so Alder Finkler.
Just the last thing, my point in what I was saying was, let's start those conversations. If we're going to start developing the RFP for Dingy, I want to start having those conversations. I don't want us to say, hey, let's do it at some point in time. Let's figure it out, here then, or what's the other thing? Let's start those conversations. That's, I think, a happy compromise here.
So what I'm hearing is a general consensus that we want to move forward with an RFP for the Dingy property. And Lisa, do you have enough information from this conversation to possibly start looking for somebody who can do a study for us on the other two properties? Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that compromise? Alder Gray.
I don't think it should be a study on the other two properties. It should be an overall study of where it should be located. It may or may not be either of those properties.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But we should do that. I do agree we should do that before we discuss an RFP on either of those, because they are both potentially locations. But neither of those stop us from moving forward with the Dingy. I do think we need to discuss more what we want in our RFP with Dingy. It's not a matter of moving forward with an RFP. It's a matter of we need to discuss how the RFP should be shaped and what we want to see in it. That's
Okay.
really the big thing.
Okay. Does anybody have any ideas of what they'd like to see in that RFP now then, or are we going to do that at the next meeting, or what is the general thought right now?
I would like the opportunity to read through
I
what
agree.
Lisa has presented.
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
No, it just, I mean, it's, we went from a couple pages to, 13?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of information to read, and I'd like to be able to sit down, read it, grasp it.
Can we
And-
please put that discussion back on the cow for 2 weeks? Okay, all right. Okay. Any other thoughts, last comments, last questions before we move on? Okay,
Oh, just, sorry, one quick thing. Do we want, so basically, we want staff to start looking into conducting a study for the fire
Yes.
station?
Yes.
Is that something that we want to give staff authority to just move forward with and get bids or whatever the proper process is? Should we be moving that to our next regular meeting so that staff has the ability to actually start moving forward with it and spend money on doing something of this nature?
okay, yes,
Yep.
Alder Finkler?
I'm with Ian. I just want to clarify, and maybe something we need to decide now. Do we want that study to be explored as a new fire department or new public safety? My vote is new public safety, but I know we've been interchanging that wording, so we should probably get that resolved so we can have that going forward.
New public safety, that's my thought. Alder Gray?
I think it's going to be dependent on, the people who conduct the study would know better if it should be a full public safety building or if it should be just police and fire, if it should be police, fire, and it'll also depend on the different locations that are available to what it could be. I don't think we should pigeonhole ourselves into only a fire station or only a public safety. I think it should be all-inclusive and figure out what the best locations are for the different items that it could potentially be. I don't think we're at a stage where we can say it should be public safety or just a fire department. I think that's kind of why we use them interchangeably right now.
Okay,
I do have an idea, though, from what you're saying. It's like we budgeted for it in the 2024 budget. You want me up there?
Yeah, sorry.
And Lisa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe since we budgeted for it, we could move forward in finding the companies who can even provide that service and look into getting some bids or contracts. And it seems like we would bring those to you. And so it almost sounded like you were going to add an extra step in there that I don't think we need.
If we don't need it, perfect.
great.
I was just asking if we needed that to give authority.
Okay.
If we don't, That makes it easier.
Okay.
Okay. Do we all know where we're going with this then? No? Okay. Me either, but that's okay. We'll move on anyway. Next item on the agenda is to discuss the CHLPC ordinance. And Alder Motive?
Last night, the ordinance ad hoc committee met, and we met with the point of contacts from the HLPC committee as well. And we are recommending that we hold on the new draft of the HLPC ordinance until we can begin to work through the zoning ordinance. This is part of the zoning ordinance, and it needs to be done correctly. We did make it clear in our discussions, and I hope we made it clear, that HLPC can continue doing business under the ordinance as it stands currently. This is not halting anything that they're doing. We all just want to make sure we're doing it correctly.
Alder Gray?
I mean, I can already hear Attorney Johnson sign, probably for the same reason I am. We do not need to rework the entire zoning ordinance just to update the HLPC's portion. Yes, there are statutory reasons that it needs to go through zoning and public hearings need to happen. We do not need to rework the entire zoning ordinance prior to it. We can only update the HLPC portion of this instead of keeping the HLPC on the line. If we are going to rework the entire zoning ordinance before it could be literally years. Like, this is not acceptable. It has already been literally years that the HLPC has been in the balance. We can simply request this to be taken for a recommendation from the zoning committee and have the public hearings and update that portion. We do not need to update the entire ordinance and spend years that we've already spent.
Mayor Hammer?
I believe that was the understanding, was that portion of that. It wasn't the whole thing. Right.
Right. And the other thing that we need to do, and we discussed, is putting together sort of a timeline, for lack of a better way of calling it, but a plan for getting the zoning ordinance as a whole updated. And I'm not saying that HLPC has to wait till after that, but we do need to put a plan together.
Alder Gray?
I don't disagree that the zoning ordinance needs to be updated. This is separate from it. Yes, it's part of the zoning ordinance, but this can be updated very quickly. It doesn't need to wait on anything else. We can, the biggest thing is the ad hoc committee never had the ability to send it anywhere but back to council. This was out, it started in council. The council has to be the ones that say it goes where it goes. The ad hoc committee has zero control or power over anything. It is not in our ordinances, it is not statutory, they have zero control or power and zero say over anything. They can only make a recommendation to council. That is all they exist to do. So council needs to decide where this needs to go and how it needs to happen. I believe it does, since there are statutory things that need to happen, we need to send it to zoning so that they can complete those things, but they need to focus on this, not on the zoning ordinance as a whole. They can focus on the zoning ordinance as a whole later.
Alder Gray, my very first sentence was, the ordinance ad hoc committee is making the recommendation of. So we have made this recommendation, and the council can weigh in on it.
Okay.
Is there a draft? I mean, is there a draft for me to take to Plan Commission? I mean, is there one that you guys are comfortable with and HLPC is comfortable with?
That's exactly what I requested to be on here tonight.
After you met, I mean.
Because the ad hoc committee does not have the authority to send the draft. We do.
Please let her, the question was being addressed to Alderman.
We have some final details that we need to hammer out, just a clarification, just Not because it was done bad, because I didn't understand some Alder Finkler's notes from the last meeting that I was not at. So once we can get clarification on that, we can make the changes from the last meeting. I think I've got it, and then once we have that draft.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other sticking point, and Sarah, hop in if I'm speaking wrong on this, was that we were under the impression it needed to go to zoning and we were not to create that final draft. So we didn't put that together last night when that was the intention of the meeting last night, was to put that final draft together to hand off. So I think that we can still do that. I mean, Sarah and I can get together and we can go over my notes and what was there, and we can do that. It's just that wasn't the impression that we got, is that we weren't supposed to do that because it shouldn't have come to us first, that we were supposed to just like stop. So we can, though. There's nothing saying we can't.
Alder Gray?
The big thing is we need some sort of draft to send to them. Like, until somebody has a draft that we send to them, there's nothing to send to them. The ad hoc committee doesn't have the authority to create and send drafts and do things on their own. They do not have any power or authority. So I would like to see this on the next regular meeting. We can hopefully have the finalized or finalish draft at the next regular council meeting, and the council can decide to send it to zoning for review and for any public hearings that need to happen.
I disagree that this should be on the regular council meeting. I would recommend if you want to carry it through to the COW, that would be fine. But we are not ready to have this at the council meeting yet. And I do recommend that we sit down with Lisa and the mayor and whoever else needs to be involved and put together a strategic plan to get everything accomplished. We were going to recommend, and I apologize that you're finding out this way, Lisa, that we all meet on December 7th. It was I didn't have time due to my work schedule today to call you and ask if you'd be available. So that is our hopes, if we can make our schedules meet.
Alder Gray?
Once again, the council needs to actually send this somewhere. So until the council reviews the actual draft, the council can't really make a decision to send this somewhere. The ad hoc committee does not have any authority. This needs to be at a council meeting for the council to make a decision. That is what I've been expressing this entire time, and the largest frustration with all of this is that it's been kept out of the council's hands with a committee that has no power to do anything.
We've already established that it needs to be here, though, but the discussion needs to happen at the COW, I believe, is what Alder Motif is saying. So then it would make more sense to carry over to the next COW.
The COW doesn't technically have the authority to do anything. It makes sense that it's been on the COW if we can get a final version before our next meeting to just put it on the next regular meeting so that the council can send it forward.
Attorney Johnson, would you like to weigh in?
Sure. So you guys are kind of saying the same thing, but not really. So waiting, the HLPC ordinance, the way that it is set up right now, should be moved forward as fast as possible and should be approved as fast as possible without thinking about the zoning code. And the reason that I say that is because the way that the HLPC ordinance is set up right now, it is formatted as a completely separate chapter. It is always going to be part of zoning, always. It is always going to be, and then if and when the city ever gets its zoning code updated, modernized, whatever word you want to use, then the HLPC chapter can easily be dropped right into the zoning code and put back where it is now. So I would not wait, because you're so far along with HLPC, you're about 95% of the way there. So I would not wait for the entire zoning code to catch up, because none of us will be here when that happens, okay? I will guarantee that. Well, maybe a couple of you, but not all of us. just because that's a multi-year project. It just is. So I would keep moving the HLPC ordinance forward in some way, shape, or form. My preference would be that the city council look at this HLPC ordinance last. And simply, it just flows a little bit better. The committee of the whole can beat it to death if it wants to. The ad hoc committee should finish whatever it is that it's finishing, should then bring it to the committee of the whole. The committee of the whole can look at it for as long as it wishes, and then the committee of the whole can refer it to the plan commission. The plan commission is actually the body that should be doing the most thorough review of all of this. They will be the body that holds the public hearing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, however many they're going to hold. And then when they make their recommendation, it will be to the council for final review and approval. That is how this flows best in my mind. So getting the ordinance finalized as best as your committee can do, so the committee of the whole can look at it maybe once, maybe twice, I don't know, maybe it's good to go, I don't know. But then it gets into the plan commission hands, and then they can do whatever it is that they want to do with it. That's your best plan.
Is everybody comfortable?
Yeah, just one more comment. I know he wants it at the next meeting, but because of scheduling conflict, I don't think we won't be able to have it at the next meeting. Or will we?
Cow?
The next cow is December 5th.
No, because we were going to meet December 7th, so it'll have to be
Yeah,
at the
that's
second
because of
cow in December.
Scheduling, yeah.
All right. So is everybody comfortable with the notion of bringing this back to the cow at the second meeting in December? Okay, thank you. With that, I would take a motion to convene to close session per State Statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data for any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility for purpose of discussing city administrator's resignation, interim city administrator coverage, and city administrator recruitment.
Aldermotive will make a motion to convene to close session per 19851C.
Alder Finkler will second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Motive and a second from Alder Finkler. Any further discussion? Okay, could I please have a roll call vote?
Gray.
Aye.
Rolke.
Aye.
Motive.
Aye.
Steiner.
Aye.
Finkler.
Aye.
Hammer.
Aye.
Okay, we are in closed session. We will not be coming back onto the air tonight. Everybody have a nice night.
Before you sneak